Okay, convening the 2 p.m. agenda this Thursday, March 31st of the House Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee meeting to order. Thank you to folks for being here live and in person, but also thank you for joining us virtually. In our continuing hybrid hearings, I just wanted to start off with a few housekeeping notes in addition to my welcome to everyone being here. That'll help facilitate today's proceedings. If this is your first time joining us in CPC, welcome. If you're testifying virtually, if you can ensure that your Zoom profile name matches the individual name or entity name that you've submitted testimony under, that helps us and our technicians to highlight you better and faster as you testify. Additionally, if you can keep yourself muted until called upon, that'll also help us in our proceedings. Once called upon, if you can unmute yourself and feel free to go ahead with your testimony. Also, we do have a 2-minute time limit here in CPC, so at the expiration of those 2 minutes, you'll hear an alarm, and if you can start to summarize your testimony, that would also be helpful. And last but certainly not least, if we can continue, we've had a great track record of this for the entire session of just extending each other aloha, irrespective of how we may feel on the particular issues. That would be greatly appreciated. With that, we'll move on to our first agenda item, SB 2600 SD2HD1, and this is relating to underground storage tanks. And like HB 2274 that we passed out of this committee, members, this bill would prohibit issuance of permits of future large underground capacity storage tanks, MALCA of the underground injection control line, which typically delineates between drinking water and non-drinking water sources. On SB 2600, we have our first testifier, the Department of Health, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair Lene Ichinotsubo. On behalf of the Department of Health, the department stands on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lene. We also have the Board of Water Supply in support.
Aloha, Ernie Lau, Manager and Chief Engineer from Honolulu Board of Water Supply. We stand in strong support of this measure. We do offer some changes to correct some issues in the bill. We recommend that the term MALCA be replaced with the word inland. MALCA is really not defined in the Hawaii revised statutes. And also the reference to the underground injection control line, we suggest that the addition of pursuant to section 340E-2 of the Hawaii revised statutes. We need that clarification to avoid any potential intra-agency conflicts that could arise in the event environmental protection and the permit approval process or priorities do not align. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ernie. We also have numerous testimonies offered in support from various organizations and individuals, but not indicating that they would be present. We have late testimony from the Department of Land and Natural Resources in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, Kalema Manuel, Deputy with the Water Commission, standing on our written testimony in support, and apologize for the lateness of the testimony. Here for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Kaleo. And we also have various testimonies offered in support, but submitted late on SB 2600. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2600? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2017 SD1 HD1 relating to emergency medical services. This repeals existing law that limits licensure as an emergency medical technician, one, to individuals whose practice is performed in a county with a population of 500,000 or greater. So in so doing, it would extend it to all counties. On SB 2017, we have the Hawaii State Fire Council in support. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can. Please.
Thank you. Sorry. Aloha, Chair and committee members. Wayne Masuda on behalf of the State Fire Council, which is made up of the 4 fire chiefs in the 4 different counties. submitted written testimony, and we stand on our written testimony. And I'm open for any questions in support of 2017.
Thank you very much. We also have the Hawaii Medical Board in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Alani Kiyoki, Executive Officer of the Hawaii Medical Board. The board will stand on its written testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alani. Members, please note on this measure, we also have testimony in support from the Maui and Honolulu Fire Departments. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2017? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on SB 2017, then we'll move on to our next, members, any questions? Seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2281, SD2HD1, relating to psychology. This would establish interim licensure requirements for school psychologists to be administered by the Board of Psychology, and it would require all school psychologists to obtain the interim license by January of 2023. It also changes the composition of the Board of Psychology to include 2 school psychologists. On SB 2281, we have the Board of Psychology in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. My name is Christopher Fernandez, and I am the Executive Officer of the Hawaii Board of Psychology. The board wishes to stand on its testimony in opposition at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. We also have again Alani Kiyogi with the Professional Vocational Licensing Division of DCCA offering comments.
Yes, good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Alani Kiyoki, Licensing Administrator for the division. The division will stand on its written comments expressing concern with regard to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alani. We have the Department of Education offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. Sean Bacon, Interim Assistant Superintendent, speaking on behalf of Keith Hayashi and the Department of Education. We stand on our testimony, providing comments, and available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. We also have the Hawaii Association of School Psychologists in support.
Aloha committee members. My name is Leslie Bonick with the Hawaii Association of School Psychologists. We stand in support, and please take note of the amendments that we proposed. I know a couple of people were in opposition due to the fact that there was not a lot of leeway. So we did add a couple of amendments that would include the Argosy people that won their lawsuit against the Argosy graduates that won their lawsuit against Argosy that were not afforded the specialist degree like they were promised. So we did want to make note of that. In addition, we want to discuss the DCCA's counterpoints. School psychologists are psychologists too. The sunset evaluations of 1981 and 1987 did not delineate specialties. It said all psychologists need licensing. When the Felix Consent Decree of 1999 happened, school psychologists were added to the Department of Education at that time. Unfortunately, we remain the only state in the nation without a credential for school psychologists. Which is not good for consumer protection. And let me say why this is important. Our consumers are special needs children generally. They deserve protection too. In addition, credentialing school psychologists and licensing us under DCCA Board of Psychology, just like all of the other Unit 13 HGEA people that we are in the same unit of the union with, they are already also licensed under DCCA. So we are no different. We are psychologists too, and our consumers also deserve protection, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Let's see, we also have indicating that they would be present to testify, Dr. Angie Graham in support.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee for listening to my testimony. First, I would like to say that I do stand by my written testimony already. However, I would also like to address the few concerns of HPA and DCCA. First of all, I think there are some individuals who have not taken the time to research what a school psychologist does. If they would take the time, they would realize that clinical and school psychologists are not that different, especially when working in the educational setting. I work with clinical psychologists and they agree that we should be licensed and don't understand why there is an issue with us being part of the Board of Psychology. The school psychologist is typically the first provider parents interact with when their child is struggling in school. Due to child find, school psychologists are typically the first to identify autism spectrum disorders, intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, ADHD, emotional disabilities, and other mental health challenges. We also identify and work with school teams to understand and describe why a disability is impacting a child's progress in school. We deal with crisis situations on campuses, such as threats to harm. We train in suicide prevention. We provide behavioral and academic intervention supports, and we provide counseling. Individuals in DCCA and HPA are concerned that school psychologists could not understand how to review a candidate for clinical licensure, and they feel that they could not review a school psychologist as a candidate for licensure. First of all, there are specific guidelines stated for both areas of specialty. It does not seem that complicated to me to review specific guidelines for each area of licensure, just as the medical board does for over 7 areas of study, the nursing board does, and the speech and audiology board. I also believe that when leadership changes in organizations, some individuals forget that this has been a continuing issue for years. And in the past, board members of DCCA and HPA have supported the school psychologists joining their board. I really hope that in general, there is just a lack of understanding of the school psychologist's role in the educational setting, because in the end, we are here for our students and work together to help our kids thrive both emotionally and academically. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Graham. Let's see. Members, that's the extent of testifiers indicating that they would be present. Please note that we have numerous organizational and individual testimonies in support on this measure. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2281? Just in case, anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2281 that I haven't called? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, then members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2382 SD2 HD1. This is relating to Hawaii products preference. It amends the procurement preference for the Hawaii products to only apply to agricultural goods, value-added products, and commodities. On SB 2384, excuse me, we have the Department of Accounting and General Services in support.
Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Johansson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry. And members of the committee, Audrey Downer, Deputy Comptroller for Department of Accounting and General Services. That extends in our written testimony in support of Senate Bill 2384, and we'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director, Deputy Comptroller. We also have the State Procurement Office offering comment.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bonick, Acting Administrator, State Procurement Office. We will stand on our written testimony in support of this bill and available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We also have the Hawaii Food Plus Policy Group in support. Jeffrey Yamauchi here. University of Hawaii, Jamie Ho.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Jamie Ho, and I'm representing Dan Covea, who apologizes for not being able to attend. The university stands on our written testimony in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Members, please note that we also have testimony from other governmental agencies as well as organizations in support on this measure. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2384? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our last agenda item, SB 3084, relating to the elevator mechanics licensing board composition. This would amend the composition of the elevator mechanics licensing board to replace the ex officio Department of Labor and Industrial Relations member with a licensed elevator mechanic member. This is to ostensibly cure a continuous quorum issue that they are having. Our first and only testifier on SB 3084 is the Elevator Mechanics Licensing Board in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am James Gizuski, Executive Officer for the Elevator Mechanics Licensing Board. The board supports this administration bill to help address difficulties the board has faced in meeting quorum requirements during the pandemic by relieving the director of DLIR of the need to dedicate its personnel to attend board meetings, and in turn will grant the board more flexibility in addressing board vacancies. The board will continue to work with DLIR on an as-need basis. This resulting flexibility will allow the board to meet quorum so it has the ability to ensure important decisions on applications and scope of practice can be made in a timely manner. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, James. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3084? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure for the elevator mechanics license? Seeing no questions, then we will recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, good afternoon. Reconvening our 2 p.m. agenda for decision-making purposes. My thanks to everybody today testifying virtually, but also our in-person testifiers. On SB 2600 relating to underground storage tanks, with the prior concurrence of the Health and Human Services and Health, Human Services and Homelessness Chair, I just want to make one simple amendment to this bill, which is to take the Board of Water Supply's suggestion that we clarify the underground injection control line as pursuant to Chapter 340E-2 in the HRS, just for clarity's sake. Again, members, we, as the House, have already passed out a substantially similar bill, which is HB 2274. This one, though, is probably tighter and I think a better vehicle. So with amendments on SB 2600, members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2600 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Aquino is excused. Representative Har. Aye. Representative Hashem. Representative Kong. Aye. Representative Mizuno is excused. Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2017 relating to emergency medical service. The recommendation here is just to make some technical amendments for consistency, clarity, and style. It's already got a defective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2017 SD1 HD1 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Aquino and Mizuno, who will be noted excused for the rest of today's agenda. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 2281 relating to psychology. I first want to start off my comments in this decision-making section with we really do appreciate the job that school psychologists do. It's just a critical part of caring for our children as I think society becomes increasingly complex. So first of all, we just want to honor your work. I do want to say that some of the amendments I'll be making is with the prior concurrence of the HHH chair. And I think there's a lot of unsettled issues that probably are best teased out by making the following changes to the bill. The amendments I'd like to make to SB 2281 would be to turn this licensure bill into a sunrise analysis on the potential licensure of school psychologists with that report due back to us prior to the convening of the 2024 legislature. I did also want to note for the record that I inquired with the Attorney General's office to ensure that making this dramatic change to the bill is still permissible after the latest recent Supreme Court ruling. And they confirmed that it is because it is still germane to the licensure of school psychology, but it's a matter of how we effectuate that potential licensure, which is why these amendments are both germane and on topic and on subject and object. I would like to note members in the committee report several things. And this also is an explanation of my rationale for turning this into a sunrise analysis. I think, as has been touched upon a little, the licensure of psychologists in general in Hawaii has had a very complex and complicated history. And I'd like to note that in the committee report, which is why I think we need to approach this with care. I do also want to note, concern over licensure of a particular specialty, as that's not typically done. I'd also like to note in the committee report that of the 49 states who do license school psychologists, 41 of those states do it through an educational body or an educational agency, not through something that would be akin to our DCCA. So again, begs the question of whether or not this should be done by the Hawaii State DOE or DCCA, which I think should be fleshed out in the sunrise analysis. But because all these questions I do think need to be reconciled with some fidelity and with some intellectual rigor and are still outstanding. That's why I'll be recommending that this be turned into a sunrise analysis. I do also want to note that there's a Senate concurrent reso coming over to us that might also do the same. This gives us two vehicles to potentially utilize both a bill and a resolution. They do have different timeframes for when the analysis needs to be completed, but I'm doing that deliberately to help the department flesh out what is the most ideal timeframe. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation to pass with amendments? Okay, thank you. Then seeing none, Vice Chair, for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2281 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2384 relating to Hawaii products preference. Recommendation here is just to pass with technical amendments for non-substantive technical amendments for consistency, clarity, and style. Members, any questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2384 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, and lastly, members, thank you. On SB 3084 relating to the Elevator Mechanics Licensing Board composition, the recommendation here is just to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050 to make sure that we are able to cross all the Ts and dot the Is, and that the House has made some amendment. So with amendments, members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3084 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, with that, members, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.